Hi everyone. Now that we've gone through and studied the pages on the Purdue OWL that show us how to format works cited entries for most of the sources that you're likely to use in papers for this class, I can show you how to set up a works cited page in Microsoft Word so that you can begin compiling your works cited entries. Now, there are two reasons that I recommend that you go ahead and start working on this now, as opposed to waiting until after you've written your paper to do your works cited page. First, as you will notice when we view the Purdue OWL site on doing in-text citations, what we will use for our in-text citations is whatever is the first item in the works cited entry that the in-text citation refers to. Most of the time, that will be authors' names, but you might run into an article from time to time that doesn't have authors' names, that is written by anonymous authors, particularly, for example, if you use a newspaper article that you download from the database. Sometimes those don't have the reporters' names on them. Okay? So if you are going to have to use the first item from the works cited entry in your in-text citations, you need to know what that first item is going to be, right? And the easiest way to do that is to set up your works cited page before you write your first draft of the paper, or at least to set up a draft of the works cited page. So I'm going to show you how to do that, and then at the end of this video, I'm going to show you how to take that draft works cited page and work with it so that all you have to do is copy and paste it on a new page at the end of your paper. Another thing that is really useful about doing a works cited page as you go along is that as writers, we all have extra pressure right before a deadline when something we're writing has to be turned in. We're going through and double checking all the writing, we're double checking the organization, we're making final revisions in wording and so forth, and having to go through the nitpicky and therefore stressful process of putting together a bibliography in those last few days is more stress than you really need. So I'm going to go ahead and show you how to work on your works cited page as you go along, which will make it a whole lot less stressful in the week or so before the paper's due. Now, I'm going to show you, of course, how to do this in Microsoft Word, since your papers have to be done in Microsoft Word. You may well have a different version of Word that you're working with than I do. It will work the same, but you will have to look for commands, because one thing about Microsoft that it makes it such a wonderful company, which is why I don't use Microsoft any more than I have to, is that they move commands around every time the wind blows. So just because I can find a command in a certain spot in my version of Word, you may have to look for it in your version of Word. Okay, so let's get started. First of all, there are some things that are specified in MLA that are important that you need to change as soon as you open any document that you're working on for a paper in MLA. The font has to be Times New Roman. If your font is anything else, for example, I think quite often the standard font or the default font might be Calibri. Okay. you can't use Calibri in MLA. It has to be Times New Roman. So you find where your font is listed, and if you point to the box, you should get a little notation drop down that says font. Okay? And you click on that box, and you type in Times. And when you hit the space bar, chances are New Roman will complete in there. If it doesn't, type in Times New Roman. Your font size has to be 12, which mine is set up as the default. If yours isn't, you click on the arrow next to the font size, and if you point at the box that says font size, and you simply select 12. The next thing you're going to do is you want to find a command, and I know in my version, Microsoft Word, it's on the View menu. But what you're looking for is the command that says ruler, and you want to click on it. That will give you rulers along the top of the page and down the side. The one down the side we don't care about much. The one at the top of the page is very important for formatting, and you'll see why in a couple of moments. So that's the first thing you want to do. Now, in Microsoft Word, everything also has to be double-spaced. You should be able to find this command pretty much in the same place it is on my version of Word, because this has remained fairly stable, at least in the past few years. You want to be on the Home tab, and you should find a kind of a boxed area that is set off by little dots that says paragraph. Now, as you see, there are 2 rows of icons here, and we will be working with several of them. The first one you want to do, that you want to use, is you want to look for an icon that has a blue arrow pointing up and a blue arrow pointing down on the left side, some spaced out even lines in the center, and a black arrow pointing down on the right of the icon. And when you point to it, it will say line spacing. You want to click on the black arrow that's to the right and select 2, because everything in MLA is double spaced. Okay, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to put the title on the page, because works cited pages have to have a title. The title has to be centered. To center the text, we again go to that little paragraph box that's on the Home tab, or at least I hope that's where your commands are. And we will see if yours is set up like mine, and most recent editions have been. You will see a series of boxes that are connected together that have lines that are different lengths and move in and out either on the left, in and out on both sides, in and out on the right, or all even. Okay, that has to do with where the text appears on the page. To center text, you want to click on the icon where the lines go in and out on both sides, and they seem to be lined up kind of in the center. And when you point to it, it says center text. So you click on that, and then you type the words works, W-O-R-K-S, and there is an S on it if there's more than one source listed. So in your case, there will always be an S there. Since I'm telling you that, make sure you do it. And then you put the word cited, and it's C-I-T-E-D, not S, C. Okay? You, in MLA, for your paper title and for the works cited page title, you do not underline it, you do not put it in quotations, you do not put it in italics, you do not bold it, you don't put it in a larger font, you don't put dancing clowns or flashing lights around it, you just type it, works cited, and then hit the return key. Now, Of course, we want our works cited entries to be against the left margin, not centered. So we go back up to that same set of icons that we were using when we selected center text. Most likely, the one on the far left, that most likely was highlighted originally, will show lines that are all even on the left, but they go in and out on the right. Okay? When you point at it, it will say align text left. You want to click on that. Okay. Now, there's one more formatting task that you need to do before you can get started, and that's what we use the ruler for. As you noticed in looking at the sample entries on the Purdue OWL, works cited entries use something called hanging indent, which means that the first line is against the left margin, and all other lines in the entry are indented 1/2 inch. In other words, it's exactly the opposite of what you will do when you write paragraphs, which of course have a first line indent. To make that happen, you hold down the Shift key, and you see on the ruler on the top, you'll see one blue arrow pointing down and one blue arrow that's split in half pointing up. Okay? Holding down the Shift key, you want to click your mouse on that lower arrow, and a line should appear in most cases, and drag it to the 1/2 inch mark on the ruler. What that will do is it will put your first line flush left, and then it will automatically line up so that everything else in that entry is indented 1/2 inch, and it won't go back to the left margin until you hit the return key. Okay? And as we do one, you'll see what I mean and why you need to use the ruler. Often, we find errors when we revise, right? We see that we left something out, or we misspelled something in an entry. If you're using the Tab key to do a hanging indent, and you make a revision that changes the split in the lines, you will have a real mess on your hands to fix. And since when I grade, I always click this little icon, which gives me indications of when you hit the return key. If your spacing is messed up because you use the Tab marker, I can tell that, because this is what happens when somebody uses the Tab key. Okay. See the little arrow? I'll be able to see that. So I'll know that instead of following instructions on how to do this easily, you attempted to do it your own way. But we don't grade on your way, we grade on mine. Okay, because my way, believe me, is going to save you a lot of stress if you screw something up in one of these works cited entries. I've done it before, so believe me, I know how difficult it is to fix that pagination. Okay, now we are set up for how we will do our works cited page. The formatting is all set up, and we can go ahead and actually get started on working on it. Okay, so the first thing we want to do, of course, is there are some things that we're going to need, some pages that we're going to need to have open. Unless you noted everything that you need for all of your sources, you're probably going to need to be able to access the library. So go ahead and click on Library in the left box. And of course, they've added this wonderful page since I did the video on how to use the library. But if you click on CSN Library Services homepage, that will take you to the page that you need. Okay, another thing, another page that we are definitely going to need, of course, is the Purdue OWL MLA. And you have several links that you can use to get to that. I'm just going to do a quick thing here and to it. And this is a page that you should recognize as the introduction to MLA formatting and style that you've already studied. Now, you don't have to do this, but if you have a fairly big screen on your computer, it's a good idea. Because you're going to have to refer to this page while you're doing every entry, I find it easier to just go ahead and move that so it's a separate browser window. Okay. That way I can minimize it and raise it, and I can also still have access to anything I might need on my Canvas website or any place else that I need to look up information. Okay. That you are going to do your works cited entry for the book you're using. And of course, everybody has to use a book, an actual physical book, not an e-book, in your paper. Now, I couldn't put the book up on the screen for you since it's actually a physical book. So I just made some notes so that you could see what the information is. Okay. And let's make that as narrow as we can so that it won't take up much room. Now this is for a book, an actual physical book. And we know that we need to go to MLA Works Cited page books to find out how to do a works cited entry for a physical book. So we click on that. Now, notice that this book is an anthology. Remember that there is a special way to cite anthologies, and we know that from having studied this. We have two authors, so we want to stop by the book with more than one author section and notice how to do two authors, which is for the first author, last name, comma, first name, comma, the word and then the first name and last name of the second author. Okay. So we made note of that. And here we have how to do the works, how to cite works in an anthology. The first thing we need is the authors of the chapters that we read. Oops, I'm on the wrong one. Okay. And we note that the first author listed is Walton, comma, Sherry. We go back to our examples to make sure, and yes, when there's more than one author, when there are two authors, we'll scroll up and find that again. We have last name, comma, first name, comma. So we do need a comma here. And then the and then we need the second author's name, which is David Fassler. And then looking at our example, we see that a period comes after the author's name. And now we scroll back to a work in an anthology, reference, or collection. And yes, quite often you do have to bounce back and forth between a number of different examples to find all the information you want. So you kind of have to work with learning how to do that, and the more you do it, the more comfortable you will become at doing it. Okay. After we have the period for our authors' names, we go back to our examples in a work in an anthology, reference, or collection. And we see that we have a space, and then we have the title of the essay or the title of the chapter. Is the same thing in an anthology. And that should be, every important word is capitalized. If there is a subtitle to the book, it's separated from the main title by a colon, and the title of the chapter is all in quotation marks. Okay, so the title of our chapter is Antidepressants Benefit Children. So we have our open quotation marks, antidepressants benefit children. Okay, we're going to go back to double check to see what kind of if we need any punctuation at the end of the title of the chapter. And yes, we do. We need a period before we have the closed quotation marks, so it's good that we check. So we have a period, and then we have our closing quotation marks. Now we go back to our sample, and we see that after that, there's a space. And then we see that we have the title of the anthology. Okay. And the title of the anthology is in italics. And again, if there's a subtitle, the subtitle is separated from the main title by a colon. So we look for our book title, and oh, it doesn't have a side title. It's a subtitle. It's just antidepressants. So we know that that has to be italicized. So we select italics, and we type in antidepressants. Okay, now let's go back and see what we need right after the end of our title. And what we need right after the end of our title is a comma, not period, a comma. Okay? So, we deselect italics and we put in our comma. Okay, what do we need after the comma? We go back to our sample and we see that we need a space. And then we need the words edited by, and edited and by are both lowercase. And do you see how that, because I was at the end of the line, Microsoft Word automatically started a new line and it was indented properly? That's why it's important to set that up by the ruler. Okay, so it's edited by, and let's go check to see if we need anything at, nope, no punctuation, just the author's, the editor's name, and the editor's name is first name first and last name last. And in this case, it's edited by Catherine Reed Dunbar. So we type in Catherine Reed Dunbar. And now, since we finished her name, we have to go over to the example and find what comes after the editor's name. It's edited by the name and then a comma. Okay, so we need a comma. And then we need the name of the publisher company. The publisher is Greenhaven Press. So we type in Greenhaven Press. Let's go check what we need after that. Okay, after the name of the publisher, we need a comma, so we put in a comma. And then we need a space, so we put in a space. And then we need the year that it was published. And the year that it was published, I've noted, is 2006. After the year it was published, we need a comma. Now, we know that if it's a one-page article, we just have P period. But this is more than one page. So we look at our example and we see that if you have more than one page in your chapter, you have a PP and then a period. Then we have the page numbers, which are 45 through 48. And we go back over and check to see, and yes, we need a period. And our first works cited entry is completed. Notice how every time you do something, you move back and forth from where you're typing to the example. And you are constantly checking what comes next and how it's formatted. And if you can do that, you can do documentation in any style, whether it's MLA, APA, Chicago Manual, whatever. If you can find the style guide on the Purdue OWL, and you can find the type of source you're working with, and if you go item by item and copy the formatting exactly, you will never have a problem with the bibliography. For some reason, students can't or won't do that. I get some of the strangest things for works cited pages. People number them, they include information we don't need, they don't include information we do need, they don't use italics any place, they don't have things in quotation marks. All you have to do is look up an example and follow the formatting exactly. You copy the formatting. So I don't really see why people have so many problems with this, except of course for finding the example for the source that they're using. Okay, let's do another one. Let's do, and we'll kind of start from scratch on this one. Let's do an article downloaded from the database. Okay. So, we click on Find Articles. And we want to browse all databases, so that's fine. And we type in our topic. Now, as you will see when we get into working on how to write the paper, I work with the topic that used to be one that students can write on, but I've taken it off the list. And that's whether or not antidepressants should be prescribed to people under the age of 18. So my keywords might be, and you can see that I searched this before, antidepressants youth. I don't want to take up a whole lot of your time by doing a really complex one. So let's look at for something that has kind of a short title and only one author. Here's one, FDA alert on antidepressants for youth by Mike Mitka. That's a simple one. Okay. One thing you'll want to do is click on this preview. Sometimes you'll be able to get a list of information that includes some of the information that you need, and sometimes clicking on it obviously won't do anything. So click on the title. And you know that when you use a source from the databases in your paper, you want to use the PDF version because, and I've already downloaded this so I won't download it again, because your in-text citations will require page numbers. Okay? The PDF version always has the page numbers on it. If you use the article that is online like this, that doesn't have any page numbers on it, in your in-text citations, you have to count how many paragraphs down you're citing. So let's say that you're summarizing the information if this is a 20-page paper, let's say it's something like the 105th paragraph. Do you really want to spend time numbering paragraphs and counting them every time you have an in-text citation? No, that's a waste of time. So if you download the PDF, all you have to do is go to either the top or the bottom of the article, and there will be a page number on there, and that's a lot easier than counting paragraphs. So that's why you want to use the PDF article. Now, a lot of the information that you need will actually be on the PDF article. Not necessarily all of it, but a lot of it will. So let's, for the time being, do away with that. We don't need that. We don't need that. Okay. Now, this is an article from a database. So we have to find a different example to use. We know that articles from databases, that would be an electronic source. So we click on MLA Works Cited, electronic sources. And we scroll down until we find, aha, an article from an online database or other electronic subscription service. Okay? Because if you're getting it from our library database, that's what this entry is. Okay. Now, we look at it and we see at our example that the first thing we need is our author's name or author's names, and we only have one, so it's last name first and first name last. And we go back and check it, and its last name is Mitka. First name is Mike. Then we go back to our example entry, and we see that after the name comes a period. So we type in a period. We go back to our example. The next thing that we need is the title of the article. It will be in quotation marks. So we start off with quotation marks. And we type in our article. In MLA, regardless of what it looks like on the PDF format, every important word in the title is capitalized. It doesn't matter what the actual journal or magazine or newspaper uses. Different publications use different styles simply as a matter of taste or a matter of choice. That doesn't matter when you're doing a works cited page. Every important word in a title of either an article, a book, a journal, a magazine, a title of anything, every important word is capitalized. So we have FDA alert on antidepressants for youth, and a period. But we will double check to make sure that a period goes there. Yes, a period, and then we have our closed quotation marks. What do we need after that? Well, we go back to our example, and we see that it is the name of the journal. In the name of the journal, sorry about that. The name of the journal appears at the bottom of our article. And we know from having just looked at it that it needs to be italicized. So we click on italics and we type in JAMA. Now we go back and see what we need next. What we need next is a comma, and it's not really italicized, so we click off our italic sign, and we put a comma. Then we need VOL period, comma, VOL period, a space, and we need the volume number. So we look and see if it's on the article, and it is. It's volume 290. And what comes after the volume number? A comma. And what comes after that comma? N-O, comma, N-O period. N-O stands for number. For some sources, instead of number, it might say issue, or it might have a number and then a colon and then another number. That's the old MLA style. In this case, it does say number, so that's useful. Most times it's not as useful. Okay, so we put 19. Ignore the fact that it's reprinted. If you are a graduate student, I would have you do other things, but for freshman comp, you don't need to do the other stuff that I would have you do. You're not a graduate student. Okay, so after our issue number, we need a comma, and then we need the date. Now, one of the things that we've noticed in looking through various MLA examples is that the date, if there's a day, a month, and a year, you have the day first, then the abbreviation for the month, and then the year. And that is what we have for this particular source. Okay? It's November 19th, so the first thing we type in is 19. Then we have the abbreviation for the month, which is N-O-V period. And then we have the year, and there are no commas in any of that. Okay. So after the date, what do we need? Well, the next thing we need are our page numbers. And in this case, the entire article is on one page. Wait, do we need a comma after that year? I forgot to check. Let's go back and double check. Yes, I need a comma after my date. And then I need one P, since it's just one page. If it were more than one page, I'd have PP, but it's just one, so it's P. And the page number is 2534. Okay. So we go and we see what we have after the page numbers. We see that there's a period. So we put a period in. And then we see that the next thing we want is the name of the database. Now, the way our library works and the way the pages are set up right now, it can be a little bit difficult to determine exactly what database we're using. Sometimes you will see when you go to the page that you download the PDF from, you might see EBSCO at the top, or you might see something like Academic Search Complete, and that's great. If you see that, use that. On the other hand, if you just use that box that's on the home page, something that you can pretty much always use, if I understand our library setup correctly, considering that they've changed it completely after classes started, you can type in ProQuest OneSearch. Okay. So it's ProQuest OneSearch, and it's in italics. Then after the name of the database, we need a comma, and then we need a URL. Okay. Now, the problem with that is that it's not yet consistent as to where you can find DOIs, if there are DOIs. It hasn't been standardized yet. But let's see some places we can check. First of all, on the page that you go to, that the library takes you to, it's very possible that the DOI will be listed right there. And in this case it is. And actually our library has done a fairly good job so that those DOIs actually appear there in most cases. If not, if you can't find a URL anyplace else until this is standardized, for this class, even if there is something on the bottom that says, that has a URL of some type, that's fine. You might see on some of these pages something that says permalink and gives you a URL. That's fine. If worse comes to worse and you can't find a DOI or a permalink anyplace, just copy the URL out of the address bar, because that will show me that you know you need a URL there. You just couldn't find the one you needed. But in most cases, what you want to use is the DOI, because that's like a permanent web address or something that they're trying to get everybody to use. Okay, so we're going to use that DOI. We found one and we're going to use it. So let's see how it's done. We go back and we see that after we name our database and we have our comma, then in just straight lettering, no italics or anything, we have lowercase d, lowercase o, lowercase I, a colon, and there's no space between the DOI and colon and the actual DOI number, which I believe I might have done wrong on the sample entries I'm going to attach, so I'll correct that very quickly. So the DOI we need, that we found, is 10.100 slash JAMA, and you see I'm getting all of this from right here, 290.19.2534. In this case, it happens to be the name of the journal, the volume number, the issue number, and the page number, but that's not what the DOI always is. So you can't necessarily base it on that. You always have to find it someplace. Okay. So we go back to our example, our sample entry, and we see that after the DOI, we have a period. If you want to put the date accessed on there, go ahead, but I'm not going to ask for it. As far as I'm concerned, there's enough work in just putting on these entries what you absolutely have to have. As you can see, this takes quite a while to do each entry because it's back and forth from the works cited page to the article to the sample. That's why I recommend that you do the works cited page as you go. Okay, now rather than take up a whole lot of your time to show you what you will do at the end of the semester, rather than take up, or before you're ready to turn in the paper, I've already put together a sample works cited page with some works cited on it. I'm just going to go ahead and copy and paste them here, which is how you will get yours to your works cited page at the end of your paper when you're finished writing it. And like I said, I had done these DOIs wrong when I did the sample because this is a whole new thing that was never done in MLA until this year. Okay, so let's say that this is the draft works cited page that you have. I want to show you something very cool that Microsoft does for you. I don't think Microsoft does too many things well, but it does this. If you highlight all of your entries, you can go up to that, again, to that paragraph section, probably on your home tab. This time, you're going to look for an icon that has a red A on top, a blue Z on the bottom, and a white arrow pointing down. And when you point to the box that says sort, you click on that. You should get a dialog box, something like this, and chances are that it will already set up to be sorted by paragraphs, the type of text, and it'll be ascending, meaning it'll go from A to Z. This will only work if you use the ruler, because Microsoft Word will see as a whole new entry anything that comes immediately after you hit the return tab. So if you use a different method and you don't use the ruler, you're going to have to alphabetize this whole thing by hand. But as it is, if you use the ruler, you can do that. Click on OK. And what was once unalphabetized is now alphabetized. Okay. Now, let's say that, see, I've got 2 entries for the same one. Noticing that now, I would, of course, take out the extra entry and close up the space. Notice that there are no extra spaces between entries. The entries are not numbered. They are alphabetized by whatever is the first item. One thing you have to be careful of is that if you have an entry that doesn't have an author, probably opens with a title that's in quotation marks, Microsoft Word is automatically going to put that one at the top. So that you will have to copy and paste into the right place, or cut and paste into the right spot in your alphabetized list. And then, if you have been typing your paper, and I'm just going to open a really quick document here and get it set up as needed. Let's say that you've been typing your paper. And you will be shown how to set up the entire paper in Microsoft Word a little bit later in the semester. Okay, let's say that's the end of your paper. What you will do to get your final works cited page onto your paper is you will go up to probably the Insert menu, and you want to look for Insert Break, and you want to select Page Break, because the works cited page has to start on a new page. Don't do that by hitting the return key, because if you do, then if you go back and edit out one line, your works cited page will move up, and it won't be in the right place. And besides, as always, I'm telling you how to do it correctly, so I expect you to do it correctly. If I didn't want you to do it that way, I wouldn't waste your time telling you. So we go back to our draft works cited page, which we have now corrected so that it actually includes the sources we want it to. Go to Edit, select all, Edit, Copy, and on this new page that we just created by inserting the page break, we paste it. And that's all we have to do when we're ready to turn in our paper, is to make sure that the only sources that are listed on the works cited page are the sources that we actually used in our paper, not necessarily all of the ones that we have looked at that are on our draft works cited page. Then we have to alphabetize it, and then we have to copy it and paste it after a page break on the end of our paper. Okay. So that's how to do a works cited page, and how to do the works cited entries working with the Purdue OWL, working back and forth from the works cited entries that you're typing, the Purdue OWL page, and probably at least the copy of the article, possibly information on the library site itself. It's not difficult, but it does take a lot of switching back and forth from one place to another to collect all the information and to get it all set up and formatted right. It takes time. If you wait until after your paper is done and it's 20 minutes before it's due, your works cited page isn't going to be right, and you will lose points for that. Okay? So go ahead and work on your works cited page as you go. If there's something that you're having problems finding an example for, email me and I'll see if I can find an example for you. I will also try to find other resources that you can contact that can help you with works cited entries. I know that You can get help from the library and the writing centers, I believe, on any of the campuses in case you can't get in touch with me. They can help you. And they can particularly help you since you're using the Purdue OWL, because they'll all have access to the Purdue OWL. And they all know how to use the Purdue OWL. So, in a way, not having a textbook is very helpful to you, because you will be using the same resources that people in the library and people in the writing center will be using, and can give you advice on where to find an example of the type of source that you're working with. Also, if you call the library or you talk to people in the library, always ask for the reference librarian. The circulation desk is largely staffed by students, and those students might not know any more about any of this than you do. The reference librarian is your friend, so always work with the reference librarian. Okay, I hope that helps. As always, if there's anything I can clarify for you, email me from an account other than Canvas at deborah.oakey@csn.edu. Thanks a lot. Hope you have some time to enjoy your day.